Okay, howdy eggs. We are back with the rest of the third installment for biomechanics. You notice I've got my Texas A&M beat the hell out of COVID-19 mask on, so I encourage you to wear this when you're out and about to make sure you're protecting other people actually a lot more than you're protecting yourself when you're wearing this mask. But when everybody wears it, we basically cut down the ability of the virus to infect each other by about 12 to 15 times. So it's a huge amount. It's well over an order of magnitude less. And I'm going to take this off now. So part of the reason that that's important is that prevents the doubling effect. In other words, normally if there's not social distancing and people don't wear masks, as people get close to each other, especially in an indoor environment, you can infect basically 2 people for every person that is infected. And that's why things take off. And in fact, if we're all wearing masks now, in theory, we should continue to decrease the number of cases instead of increasing. So some places, at least at this time, and I'm recording this in June, some areas are going up, a little bit more rural now, and then some places are going down. So we have to keep at it. So back to biomechanics, I had to make a few changes because usually in this lecture, I actually stand up, and I actually tried a bit of that. It really didn't work out too well in this environment. And I'll also have you guys participate. Now, if you guys within your environment where you are right now, if you want to stand up through this part of the discussion, then definitely go ahead and do this because we're going to go over a number of anatomical terms. So most of these come in pairs. The first pair is superior versus inferior. Superior meaning towards the top of the head, and then inferior meaning towards the feet. So I've got a couple models here. So towards the top of the head would be superior, towards the feet would be inferior. So if we compare, for example, the knee joint versus the hip joint would be superior and the knee joint would be inferior. If we compared, for example, let's say the sternum versus the chin would be superior, the sternum would be inferior. If we compare the elbow and the wrist would be inferior compared with the elbow. Anterior versus posterior, anterior meaning towards the front. So we see this gentleman in the anatomical position. So the pectoralis major, for example, would be anterior towards the front compared with latissimus dorsi or maybe the scapula. So I think for the most part, a lot of these pairs are pretty straightforward. Medial versus lateral, medial meaning towards the inside. So with the elbow joint, the elbow joint is a hinge joint. So there are 2 collateral ligaments, one on the inside, one on the outside, that prevent abduction and adduction. Those are movements that we're going to go over in the class. So the medial collateral ligaments on the inside. And the way to think about this is put yourself or imagine someone in the anatomical position. And when they're in the anatomical position, that's kind of our 0. That is our origin. So just like 2 and 3-dimensional orthogonal axes, or when when we get to the angular reference system, you're going to have basically an origin or a 0 that determines where movement at where positions are. So medial versus lateral, the medial collateral ligament's on the inside, the lateral collateral ligament is on the outside. the acromioclavicular joint right here between the acromion process of the scapula and the clavicle, the old AC joint. That is lateral compared with the sternum. Proximal versus distal. This usually has to do with the arms and the legs. And there's specific terms. Proximal means closer to the midline of the body or closer to the trunk. And then distal means farther away from the trunk. So if we compare the knee and the ankle joint will be distal, the knee joint will be proximal. The elbow and the shoulder is proximal, the elbow joint would be distal. So pretty straightforward, I think, for the most part. Superficial versus deep. Superficial meaning towards the surface, and then deep meaning away from the surface towards the interior. So you can think about your intestines as being deep, and then your navel being superficial. If we think about the quadriceps group, remember there are 4 muscles. There is the gluteus medius, right? There is the rectus femoris. There is the vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius. I think I misspoke. Did I say gluteus medius? Oh my goodness. Okay, so starting over. Sorry, 4 muscles. There is the rectus femoris in the middle. There is the vastus medius in the inside, vastus lateralis on the outside, vastus lateralis on the outside, and vastus intermedius right in the middle. So the vastus intermedius would be the deep muscle, the rectus femoris, the vastus medialis, the vastus lateralis would be the superficial muscles. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Let's see.